festive weekend in Wisconsin. Good to have you with us on this edition of Ed Schultz News and Commentary from the North Country. Going to be in Wisconsin on Saturday for the Bobfest. I've never been to Bobfest. I've heard a lot about it. It's when progressives from around the state gather, and it's not just a political convention. It's a real shindig, although there's heavy political talk. There's speakers that come in. I've been honored enough, and should I say I am honored that they have asked me to come in and speak at Bobfest. I'm looking forward to it in a big way. That's Saturday in Madison, Wisconsin. All right, Wisconsin continues to be a hotbed because of all of the garbage that Scott Walker's pulling legislatively in Wisconsin, how he's trying to reinvigorate his campaign. He's doubling down on his anti-union talk all around the country, wants to get rid of the National Labor Relations Board. He's doing anything he can, and he's going to fall flat on his face. The radical agenda he had in Wisconsin, I knew years ago was wrong, and I knew it wasn't a national platform, and it's not now. And it's only going to get worse for him as I see it. Now, the problems of Washington continue. What are we going to do with the government? Is it going to continue to run? We're running out of days. We're coming up on October 1st. Are we going to have another government shutdown? Are the Republicans going to pull another stunt? Are they going to try to horse trade at the table to try to get what they want and hold the American people and the budget hostage? The last time we had a shutdown, it was caused by the Republicans. We did get some comedy out of it with green eggs and ham on the Senate floor with Ted Cruz. But beyond all that, it cost the country $25 billion. And it didn't do a damn bit of good for anybody, and the Republicans were big losers. And here they are at the table again, talking about doing it again. Staring down the possibility of another government shutdown at the end of the month, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell went on record with Politico to tamp down fears that there would be a shutdown over Planned Parenthood funding. Well, it's easy for him to say, but he doesn't control the Tea Partiers. Shutting down the government, it doesn't defund Planned Parenthood any more than shutting down the government 2 years ago when it defunded Obamacare. And that basically is the pitch he's making to Republicans. The question is that going to resonate with enough Republicans so they come to their senses thinking that this isn't the right thing to do? Let's go to Mark Pocan from Wisconsin, the congressman who sits on the House Budget Committee. Congressman, good to have you with us.
Oh, thanks, Ed. Glad to be here.
All right, where are we? What do you think? Is this going to? Are there enough Tea Party members to raise hell on the budget to shut this thing down?
Well, this is an interesting issue. I mean, the bottom line is Ted Cruz the Speaker of the House, like he's proven to be in the past, or not? There's a contingent who thinks that they want to flirt with a shutdown again. They forget how bad it was for them 2 years ago. Had it not been for the clumsy website for the Affordable Care Act, we in the generic ballot were up 9 points after they closed down government as they did, and they're flirting with it again. Speaker Cruz, is trying to put it out there as he's running for president, and since he kind of controls that wing of the Tea Party in the House, he comes over and meets with those folks. It's very possible. Now, some of the folks from the so-called Freedom Caucus, they're the most right of the Republican caucus, have said, let's go a little slow. But it's only been a couple voices of moderation, and we're waiting to see. The bottom line is we haven't done a single thing to move us closer to a resolution that has to happen by October 1st. Well,
that's the key point here, is that government is stalled. That's basically what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, if it were a horse, it would be dead. Nothing is moving on the budget side. This summer, you probably remember, usually we do about a dozen appropriation bills every year. That's the process of the budget. Partway through, when there was amendments about the Confederate flag and a federal cemetery, too many Republicans wanted to stick with the Confederate flag, and they didn't want to be embarrassed. They pulled all the appropriation bills, so we didn't do our job yet again in getting that done. That's why we're facing this deadline of October 1st.
So what do you think the position of the Democrats? What's the position of the Dems here? Look, fund the government and let's keep going. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah,
we can talk about deal breakers. What's a deal maker?
Moving forward, what we're guessing, the people who want to move something forward on the other side of the aisle, we hear the debate to be more around, are we going to fund it through the end of November or end of December? which is ultimately still not a great idea, but it's better than shutting government down. I mean, we keep doing governing by a couple months at a time, and it's a terrible process, but that's been happening since the 2010 election.
So, Congressman, I thought we were taking in more money to the Treasury than ever before, and I thought that we were spending less. Why is this happening?
Because they don't know what they actually stand for as a party. Right now, the issue du jour for many of the Republicans is the Planned Parenthood issue, a largely manufactured issue, and yet they're trying to say now, we won't vote for a budget bill that funds Planned Parenthood, which is a minuscule part of the budget, and again, as you know, none of that goes towards abortions. So it's a whole, they're aiming one direction and the issue's another direction, but they're using that as an excuse. I think part of it is just, the Tea Party fundamentally don't believe in government, but they ran for office to run government, and this is a constant struggle they have about doing their jobs and being able to pound their chest and talk tough. And, because the presidential campaign, more people are pounding their chest and talking tough, as you pointed out with Scott Walker and others. Well,
based on McConnell's interview with Politico, you think that this will be resolved, or that there will be a problem? What's your call on this?
The Senate is pretty clear in signaling they don't want to shut down. But, and Speaker Boehner, quite honestly, I think would like to not have a shutdown, but he has relinquished his speakership to this, tail that wags the dog of the hardcore Tea Party people. So who knows? I mean, last week we thought we were going in for a simple vote on the Iran deal, and it exploded because they don't control their own caucus. So I don't know what'll happen in the House because clearly no one is in control. If I had to say who's in control, my best guess would be Ted Cruz. But that's the problem. There is no one in control on the House side, on the Republican.
Let's talk about Scott Walker, your governor there in Wisconsin. Isn't there somewhat among Democrats an I told you so moment taking place here?
Well, this is classic. He's imploding. He's tying for fifth. He's tying for eighth in different polls. And what he's trying to do is now double down on what kind of gave him a little bit of national prominence. These candidates do anything to try to pick up 1 or 2% in Iowa to try to, win the caucus. And this is what Scott Walker's up to. And this is really the one trick pony he's got, right? He got a little notoriety by bashing working people through bashing the public sector unions. He's trying to come back to that. But I'll tell you, this is the most dismal presidential campaign I can remember. The fact that he's running such a lackluster race, and now he's trying to come back to this old wonder. It's time for him just to pack it up and, come, I hate to say it, but come home.
Yeah, well, he hadn't done a very good job there either when it comes to job creation and everything else. His reforms have been so radical, they're just being rejected everywhere. Now, we got cut 13 on the big list today. He's talking about freedom, right to work should be everywhere in the country.
That sort of freedom should be available not just in my state and 24 others. We want to extend that freedom all across the country. It's to wreak havoc on Washington. America needs a leader who actually has real solutions.
Well, he has no solutions other than hurt families. And the 24 states that he's talking about that have right-to-work legislation have been browbeaten by Republican legislators. Not everybody is for that. And so now he wants to bring it to a national level. Do you think something like that would jumpstart his campaign?
No, I really don't. I think, his problem is he just doesn't really believe in much himself. He's allowed the Koch brothers and others to manipulate him for so long. And there's just not a real set of core values that guide people like you and me, Ed. So, he gets out there, he answers a question, and I don't know if there's a week that his campaign doesn't put out a clarifying statement. He didn't really want to build a wall with Canada. I mean, he's always trying to one-up whatever crazy idea the Republicans are putting. And again, this is just him.
Yeah, he's got a campaign corrections department in full force. There's no doubt about that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's kind of sad because people in the Midwest, I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican, I think you're fundamentally, nice people. You know that. You're from the Midwest. That's how we operate. And you watch someone like this, and he just kind of solidifies this misnomer of flyover country. And it's embarrassing to Democrats and Republicans in the Midwest because, we're good-hearted, kind people up here, and I think a lot of smart, hardworking people. Yeah. And he doesn't represent us, and that's what's more frustrating than anything.
Well, I'm looking forward to having a conversation about Scott Walker at Bobfest this weekend, no doubt about it, in Madison. Congressman Mark Pocan, great to have you with us. Appreciate it. We'll see you this weekend.
Thank you, Ed. We'll see you. Looking forward to it.
You bet. All right. Now, you may remember when I was doing the cable show, I went to a place called Lorain, Ohio, and I talked about the tubular goods and a $300 million investment that U.S. Steel had put into that plant. That plant is now idle. I will go to Lorain, Ohio in the coming weeks. I'm going to be speaking in Cleveland, Ohio, and then also in Youngstown, Ohio. We'll have the schedule up on our website at wegoted.com. And I'm going to do a story on that plant because it all leads to a lousy trade agreement and dumping of Chinese and South Korean steel on our market, and it's gutting American jobs. This is exactly why we as a country have to say no to another lousy trade agreement, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. We're going to get an update on that from Lori Wallach when we come back. This is Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Communication Workers of America, Alliance for American Manufacturing, BioGreen Clean, and the iSave team bringing this production. We're right back. Hey, folks, you've heard me talk about BioGreen Clean. I'm going to show you right now on my airplane just how tough this is. I want you to keep in mind, chemical-free, 100% plant-derived, biodegradable. It is the safest cleaner that you can get, and it's the most effective. Go to our website, wegoted.com, or go to biogreenclean.com. www.biogreenclean and order today. It's time to continue our conversation about mechanical insulation. Mechanical insulation is for the piping systems in our nation's commercial and industrial facilities. Facility owners are burning up billions of dollars through the lack of mechanical insulation on these piping systems. Call the iSave team. Insulation saves America valuable energy, and this team of energy conservation specialists is shovel-ready to save you money. Visit iSaveTeam.org to have a specialist give your plant an energy audit.
We perpetuate a culture of crime all the way from Wall Street right down to the main street in our hometowns. It's worse than it has been since FDR took control of the problem and said we can't count on industry taking care of the American labor. They probably have already engaged into some type of criminal cover-up, and the law prohibits the government from even doing anything about it.
Catch America's lawyer Mike Papantonio on YouTube at youtube.com/GoLeftTV.
Subscribe to the Ed Schultz podcast today. Simply log on to iTunes, search for Ed Schultz, and click the subscribe button to have the show delivered to your preferred listening device daily, free of charge. Rate and review the podcast to tell us how we're doing. More details at wegoted.com.
Good to have you with us here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. When I had the platform of a television show, I talked a lot about the Trans-Pacific Partnership and how trade deals cut right to the middle class. The middle class is really what 2012 was about and what 2016 is about. Bernie Sanders is building his campaign, building the awareness amongst Americans about what has to be done to rebuild the middle class and how vital it is to make sure that we don't have a have and have-not society. All of these trade deals that we have done gut American jobs. We're not on a level playing field. There's a lot of devil in the detail. It's really hard to sort out, but I spent over a year on this, on the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It's not a done deal yet. And I find it very interesting that there were 3 days of negotiations in dealing with how they're going to deal with the automobile industry in Washington last week, and there was no coverage of it whatsoever. None. It's almost like it's under the rug. And the negotiations have been done under the rug and out of the eyes and the ears of those who you have elected to go to Washington to represent you. This is a corporate deal that's being shoved on American workers and American families. It's not good for us. It encompasses 40% of the world's gross domestic product. It is, quote, a pivot to Asia. In other words, an emerging market of more cheap labor to be found on our globe. And the bottom line here is that with no negotiation and people being left out, it's almost as if the Obama administration and the trade negotiators in Wall Street, they don't want the people to know exactly what's going on, and they're going to squash out voices that have anything to say about it. Well, guess what? Bernie Sanders says, look, you have to pay attention to people who disagree with you. He said this yesterday at Liberty University.
Now, in my view, and I say this as somebody whose voice is hoarse because I have given dozens of speeches in the last few months, it is easy to go out and talk to people who agree with you. I was in Greensboro, North Carolina just last night. All right. We had 9,000 people out. Mostly they agreed with me. And tonight, we're going to be in Manassas and have thousands out, and they agree with me. That's not hard to do, but not less important for us to try and communicate with those who do not agree with us on every issue.
You know, I when I heard that soundbite, I thought to myself, gosh, Obama has sure changed, because he's not out selling the Trans-Pacific Partnership. He's out browbeating those who are against him on this. He's sending his minions out to try to tell everybody in the corporate world that just stay focused. We'll get rid of the people who are in the way, and we're going to make this thing happen. Well, Lori Wallach is with us. She is the director of Public Citizens Global Trade Watch, for an update on exactly where this is. Trans-Pacific Partnership, is it a done deal? Is there anything that's going to stop it? Lori, good to have you with us.
Thank you, Ed. It is not a done deal, and we have it within ourselves, our own action as citizens, to make sure it never is a done deal, and we don't see the foreseeable hemorrhage of more American jobs offshore and the downward pressure on our wages that everyone knows will happen if American workers are thrown into competition with workers in Vietnam making 60 cents an hour.
So why hasn't this deal gone through? What's the holdup?
So here's what's interesting. As we've discussed before, most of the TPP's chapters, of which there are 30, have nothing to do with trade. Instead, it's become this sort of Trojan horse delivery mechanism for every slimy corporate interest to get into place the things they can't win in public, in Congress or state legislatures. And because of all these outrageous things, special monopoly protections for the big pharmaceutical companies that would raise medicine prices, special corporate rights for foreign investors to attack our domestic laws and raid our tax dollars, get paid off for having to meet our laws.
Sue the United States if things don't go their way.
In front of tribunals with 3 private attorneys from other countries. You couldn't believe it, except that chapter actually leaked from the secret negotiation.
So it would circumvent American law.
And courts, and raid our treasury. You got it.
So that's where the Tea Partiers are against it.
That's exactly right. But also, it would ban Buy American and Buy Local and sweat-free procurement. It gets into so many. It would limit our food safety rules. It would undermine internet freedom. All those chapters have meant that in other TPP countries, the politics, the public, have been on the streets. For instance, there is a mass set of arrests just yesterday in Wellington, in New Zealand, because protesters there were so irate about the chapter that would jack up medicine prices, they stormed the trade ministry. So the bottom line of why there isn't a deal is the things that sadly the U.S. is asking from a lot of the other countries. The other countries' governments know if they agree to some of that stuff, they could have serious political problems at home. So, meanwhile, the other thing that's happened is sadly the Obama administration was willing to give away the entire U.S. auto industry, make a deal with Japan that would allow cars to come in here duty-free, special treatment, even if only a small part of the content, the parts, actually was from any country in the deal, which meant like 65% of the content could be from China. It would still be in the deal, but China's not in the deal. And ironically, our NAFTA trade partners, Mexico and Canada, blew that deal up. That's what saved us so far.
This is unlike anything that we've ever seen when it comes to trade because of the side deals, because of the legal side deals, because of the vehicle that's being presented to circumvent American law that would disarm our elected officials to protect American industry and American workers. This is all profit-driven for the very few and not good for the country, if you had to put it in a nutshell.
That's right.
So is Obama naive? Was he aware from the start that this is the kind of garbage that was in on this deal?
His advisors have convinced him that everything that anyone has said critically about this agreement, including, for instance, his previous Harvard Law School professors, who not surprisingly criticized this extrajudicial non-U.S. corporate tribunal tax raiding operation, they are all just wrong. And at some level, you have to know he must ideologically support this stuff, because at the point that a few people he used to know and trust say there's a problem, all right, you can listen to your advisors and ignore the people you used to trust. But at the point that basically, in the entire U.S. House of Representatives, only 15 Democrats voted yes for the procedure that would put this in place. At the point that, his constitutional law professor from Harvard is saying this is a serious problem. At the point that his vice president's former economic advisor is saying this is a real problem, and he still says, oh, no, it's good. Other economists who supported past trade agreements say it's a problem. The good news is there's still a big group in Congress, Democrats and Republicans alike, who are very, very worried about the TPP. So, folks, if you're listening to this, and this scares you, and it should, because it's about your job, your wages, the safety of the food you feed your kids, whether your granny can get medicine she can afford, all of that we can still do something about. And the key thing is to talk to your member of the House of Representatives. The real deciding pressure is going to actually come from the House. So the thing to do is right now members of Congress are very involved because the Obama administration is trying to finish the deal in the next 2 weeks. If they can't get a deal announced to Congress by the 24th of September, coming up very fast, then they can't have a vote on it this year. So talk to your members of Congress. Everyone can call the Capitol switchboard. It's very easy. You don't even need to know the name. You just give them your zip code. This is a good number, I'm going to say, that everyone should write down because you can use it for every issue. It's 202-225-3121. And the message is, I want to speak to the chief of staff for my congressperson. You get the chief of staff, you probably get the voicemail, and just say, I want a letter confirming my member of Congress is going to stop the TPP before it kills my job.
It's that easy. 202-225-3121. That's 202-225-3121. Make the call to Washington. Say you want to talk to the chief of staff of your representative, and then go on record against the TPP. Now, the 24th, back up just a little bit. The significance of this date again. Why is that?
So, you Ed, did a great job with helping the public understand this fight that happened in Congress this spring and summer over the procedure called fast-track trade authority.
Yep.
And that's this sneaky procedure that railroads bad trade agreements through Congress. Well, the way that procedure works is in order for the president to be able to have this no-amendment, high-speed, crazy vote procedure for a trade agreement, notice has to be given to Congress at least 90 days before an agreement can be signed. And so 90 days before Christmas Eve, the last possible day you could imagine Congress voting, happens to be the 24th of September.
Yeah.
So if these many outstanding issues that are so important to all of us in these secret closed-door TPP negotiations can't all get resolved, and a deal can't get finished, and Congress get told the deal is finished by the 24th, we at least know that they're not going to be having any votes on this deal this year.
Your thoughts on how it has vanished from mainstream media conversation and coverage? I mean, this meeting last week with the automobile industry, the devil in the details on what the holdup is, fast track, TPP, what it means, it's all gone. It's all gone. It's backdoor conversations and grassroots work such as yourself that you're doing, and few in Congress who give a damn at this point that think it can be stopped. That's where it is, right?
I mean, I think the good news is there are a lot of people in Congress who think it can be stopped, and they just need to be reinforced by their voters back home, and there's a bunch of undecided folks who aren't sure what they're going to do with it, and that's what we can help. So, but the mainstream media issue, I'll tell you what my hunch is. It's sad, but there is no sort of exciting battle at this very moment. And so when the fast track fight was going on, that was a lot of drama.
It's a little too academic for them.
It forced them. No, well, I think, yes, partially it's too academic, but I think that the big media companies aren't that interested in covering this because there are things in there that they could make money off of. So when there's a big national debate like the fast track fight, they can't but cover it. They would look idiotic if they didn't cover it. But now that there isn't a sort of a necessity to cover a big national political battle, it's easy to slip it under the radar. Because if you think about it, Ed, but for you, until Fast Track really took off in the spring, there was not a whole lot of coverage about TPP, and it was a big honking deal before the Fast Track fight.
So it's the Fast Track to 924, which would give the president authority to move forward on this. That's what we got to start.
Yes, sir.
All right, Lori, great to have you with us. We'll visit again before the 24th. Keep up the great work. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Director of Media Citizens Global Trade Watch, Lori Wallach, with us here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Now this.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania to the auto factories of Michigan to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
The Ed Schultz Internet broadcast is brought to you by the Ring of Fire radio show. Listen to the Ring of Fire weekends on radio stations across the country. Get more information and the news of the day at ringofireradio.com.
Going to Lorain, Ohio on September 29th to explain why the steel manufacturing plant is idle. We'll be in Cleveland, Ohio on September 30th to rally Democrats and progressive organizations that need to get it in gear, because we're not going to win the White House unless we win the state of Ohio. And then I'll be speaking at the AFL-CIO annual dinner in Youngstown, Ohio on October 1st. So it'll be 3 days in Ohio. Looking forward to it. Lots going on. And, of course, the battle continues. Keep it right here at WeGotEd.com, RingOfFireRadio.com, and RawStory.com for all the latest on what's really important and what's being ignored by the mainstream media. This is Ed Schultz News and Commentary. We're back tomorrow.